Hi guys, today I wanted to talk to you guys about a workplace profile, which is a document on Microsoft Sway, which is a platform you mightn't have heard about, but it's very easy to use, that we ask all of our interns to fill out, but also as staff of the Disability Service, we also complete ourselves. Essentially, a workplace profile helps an employer get to know you and your needs, and allows you to share information that otherwise could take months for an employer to learn throughout interacting with you on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to walk you through my workplace profile, what I chose to include, but once again, everything that I have included in mine is optional for you. You can include as much information as you would like, as little as you would like. It's all entirely your choice. I use this personally to explore explaining my disability around autism, ADHD, chronic illness, and to explain to people that my experiences of those disabilities isn't static and actually can change on a daily basis. I also use it to talk about things that I really like, my passions, what I do outside work, what I might find stressful in the workplace environment and what can help me if I'm stressed, all of these different things. So you can take a look and see what's useful for you to include, and it can be really handy for the employers to have this before you start your internship, to get an idea of who you are, what you're interested in, what you might connect with, particularly within a project you're working on. It's just a really good overview. So let's get into it. Hi everyone, I am here talking to you guys and sharing my screen to show you Microsoft Sway and what a workplace profile looks like. We will share this template with you if you are joining to talk to us about a different internship, but I just want to talk you through the different things I chose to include here. When you get this template, it will share you a link to allow you to create a storyline. This will be filled with my information currently, but ultimately the template we share with you guys will be blank, and you can add in as much or as little information. You can delete sections, you can add things, and when you're finished, you create a design. So I suppose to talk you guys through what I chose to include, what I think is useful for an employer to know in advance is potentially what you look like, your pronouns. I chose to include my area of study as I'm also a PhD student. That can be really relevant. It's what I do outside work. It's what I love talking about. You can choose to include your area of study, whether you're graduating or not. Even if the internship you're doing is not super related to the area of study you were in, it can be really nice to just have that information because you don't know who else in the office will have an area of interest in that. I chose to include this section about my disability information. I chose to disclose my diagnoses. I also chose to include how I feel talking about my disability. I'm generally pretty comfortable talking about my disabilities, except when they are brought up really suddenly or I feel taken aback, I guess, generally when I'm stressed, to be honest. So you can include whatever you would like here. You can also delete this section if you do not want to disclose. I think for me, something that can happen when I get really overwhelmed is I'm not the best in those moments of verbally communicating that I need space, or that I am not actually annoyed at someone, I'm just really stressed or something like that. So by having a disability profile, I included, I suppose, the idea that my disabilities aren't static, that I'm not the same every day. My experiences of chronic illness they're not the same every day. And this gives someone an idea that actually I might need to advocate for myself differently on different days, depending on what's going on. I also included why I applied for this role. This can be really nice for an employer to have ahead of time for you joining, so they can see why you were really interested in this and the aspects that really sparked your interest. It's important to remember that by the time you apply and when you start, there'll probably be a good few weeks in between. So an employer might have forgotten some of the key things you mentioned in your interview. So this is a really good opportunity for you to be able to reiterate why you're excited for the role and potentially what you're nervous about. I think it's totally okay to say if there's an area that you're a little bit anxious about, that's okay. For me, once again, I thought it was really important to include what causes me stress, what makes me happy, what I like talking about, my hobbies, my skills. This can be really nice, I suppose, for a line manager or for the rest of the team to already kind of have in their head if there's somebody in the office that they think you would really get on with, or Sometimes different offices do different social outings and get-togethers. This is a really good idea for them to get to know you and what you might be interested in. In the workplace themselves, this is pretty important, and I would recommend everyone put this in, even though it's entirely up to you again. I tend to prefer to work in isolation in pretty quiet environments. I can't do overhead lighting that well. I really struggle with that kind of thing. So for me, that was important to say. My preferred working style, I know that a lot of people tend to work really like consistently between 9 to 5. I tend to like be all or nothing, and there can be hours where I do nothing and then an hour where I could get 6 hours work done in that 1 hour because of how I focus. And that can be important for an employer to know that actually the pattern of how I work is different, just like the pattern of how I think. My in-person communication preferences and my remote communication preferences. This is important for me to say because I really struggle with phone calls. I'm okay with video calls, but I really struggle with phone calls. And that was something that if I was starting a new job and I knew there was going to be a phone involved, I would need them to know that in advance. Not that I wouldn't try it, but that it might take me a little bit longer to get used to it. This is, I guess, again, just a bit of a pre-information before you start, which is about what makes you anxious about new environments, what helps when you're feeling overwhelmed, what makes you feel worse. For me, for example, I know it can be a tendency that when I'm very stressed and overwhelmed for people to try and comfort me. Usually I don't need comfort, I need space. So it can be really nice to be given that space and be given room to either go into a sensory space nearby, which there are on campus and the different employers should know about, and to be able to just sit by myself really. So this can be really handy, especially if when you start the role, it might take you a while before you feel comfortable saying, guys, I need to step out of the office for a minute, I'm really overwhelmed. Whereas this way, they can know that before you even start, and they might be able to suggest to you that you can do that before you are able to verbalize what you need because you're maybe not comfortable in the environment just yet. Sensory profile, this might be relevant for some people, it mightn't be, but I'd like to include it because I'm very sensory sensitive. I know a lot of people who are sensory seeking and they don't mind bright overhead lights, other like different smells, like if people are spraying perfume in the office, things like that. But I do, so for me it was pretty important to put it down. I put down the different things that I might struggle with in each of these areas, and where they might come up as problems. So for example, taste sounds like it probably shouldn't be an issue, but when there's a lot of food offered in the office and people continuously insist that I try their food, but actually it's not the food that's the problem, it's the texture, that can be hard to get across. So sometimes it's really important to have these things written down. And once again, if someone is maybe, not aware of what you need, you can always ask them to review your workplace profile if you are not able in that moment to give them a full breakdown of your sensory profile, because in reality, that's very hard to do. For socializing, I like to put this in because different offices have different levels of socialization. There can be an expectation to have lunch together some days. There can be all of these kind of unspoken expectations, whereas there are different times that I need to be alone. There's different times when I love being with everyone and love group events. So my priority is that I really love when I'm asked to go to things rather than someone assuming on my behalf that I won't enjoy it or I'm not able for it. That really upsets me and can stress me out. So I included here the different considerations I make when I'm choosing to socialise or not, which is around my autistic triggers, but also my health. And then a lot of the times there's more going on in my head as I consider socialising with the team or not than it may look like from the off. And additional information, this is just an extra opportunity for you to add in anything that you feel like the profile didn't cover up until this point. So for me, I like to include that sometimes I don't always get what I'm trying to communicate right, and I can misunderstand something that's said, or I can, I suppose, misunderstand someone's communication style in one way or the other, but I want people to know that my intentions are always really good, that I'm trying my best, and that I really, more than anything, so appreciate when people are patient. So that's essentially a workplace profile. Once again, you will be able to create a storyline when the template is shared with you, and we're happy to support you in this. You can add in different sections, you can swap things around, you can change anything you like. Maybe there's something that's very relevant to you that I didn't even consider here. And then you will be able to share this with the employer beforehand. With our support, we'll help you complete it if you would like that level of support. That's never a problem. I hope this was helpful for you guys, and I look forward to talking to you guys in the future.